Dr. Carmen Smith. And in the videos that you're about to see going forward, I talk about writing a new story. That's so important because our lives are based on the stories that we believe, the stories that we tell ourselves. And these stories are so important because it will determine what we can create. So if we feel like we're telling ourselves a limiting story, like, oh, I can't do that, or oh, I don't know anything about that, I'll never be good at that, that's what's going to be manifested within our lives. We're going to have smaller and smaller lives when we believe those limiting stories. It puts you in a box or a prison. Not just for ourselves, but what about the story we're telling about the world or about the city we live in, about the United States, about humanity? So if we have a negative loop going on, like, oh, humans will never change, oh, things will never get better, oh, things are going to get worse. Well, guess what? That story is going to have legs. It's going to have an action behind it, and it's going to create exactly what you tell it. This is crazy because we think that, oh, we're seeing everything clearly and we know everything, and oh, you don't know the facts. You're living in la la land if you think things are going to get better or if they are better. Well, let me tell you, I want to create a wonderful environment, a peaceful, wonderful place where everyone feels connected to each other. And so I'm going to tell that story. And guess what? It manifests in my life. I see it showing up. But we have to really look at the stories that we're telling ourselves, not just about our lives, but about everything around us. And when we change our story, you can say that's a miracle. Love you. And my topic fits in beautifully with that, which is boldly living a new story. And I emphasize new because this is our time. It's so important to rewrite your story. And you have total permission right now. And I'm not just talking about the individual. Yes, we need to write our own story. But going forward, the United States, the world, the planet needs to write a new story. And it needs to be based on who and what you truly are. Let me give you an example. In Star Trek, you know, where it says, boldly go where no man has gone before. We need to boldly redefine who we are in this universe so that we can go forward. And the word for that is evolution. As humans, we're evolving. We're evolving into who we've always been, but really never recognized. So let me take you to that place so that you can write your own story boldly. So what does that mean? That means that most humans are looking at their life from a lower frequency, meaning that they're looking at their life through all the things that have happened to them. And so they identify as a victim. This is a lower frequency. It's not a God frequency. And in order to evolve, we need to step into the identity of God. Now, for thousands of years, we've been told that's blasphemy. But we're living in a time where if we don't make that connection, if we don't make that leap, if we don't rewrite that story, then we're doomed to repeat more victimization, more violence, more anger, more division, and more polarization. So we need to leap into light years of thinking. We need to leave the past victimization and horror and division behind us and step into who we always have been, but we're not brave enough and not told a correct story of who we truly are. And we are powerful beyond measure. We are empathic beings. We have intelligence that is beyond words and goes into telepathy and understanding and connecting with energy. And if this sounds woo-woo, then I'm asking you to take a leap into who you truly are. And I understand you've never been taught this in school. You've been taught information that you're just supposed to regurgitate, so you never really know your own story. And so I understand that we all come from this weak educational vibratory energy that keeps us under control. I understand that. But now is a time to let go of the story. So let me talk individually. I can give examples in my own life. As a matter of fact, the first time that I taught at Center for Spiritual Living in Greater Las Vegas, I told the story of 20, 30 years ago when I was attending a couples group for couples that were going through divorce and going through tough times. I talked about having my infant son in the stroller, and I talked about how I lifted that stroller down the stairs as I realized that my marriage was over. And as a matter of fact, I kind of associated my marriage with my whole world, my whole life. And I really felt like a victim in that moment. But I would not be standing here today if I had not turned that story into an empowering tale where I was the hero. And I didn't need to make anyone the villain. All I needed to do was come up higher in the realization of how powerful and courageous I am, self-contained in this temple of God, that I didn't need something else to fulfill me or something else to destroy me, that I was indestructible. So I want to just give you a few tips on how to get to that point, because there's so many people that have stories from 30 years ago of victimization that they still tell that victimization story 30 years later when they're talking to a friend. And it's an indication of how you've stored that story within yourself, and it has dictated a lot of victim experiences ever since. So how do you write a bold new story and begin to live it? Well, first of all, I understood that I felt like a victim. And I also understood that every time I told that story to my friend or to my sister or to my relative, I was increasing the vibration of woe is me. I'm not good enough. This is not fair. And so I realized I needed to stop telling the story. So when people would ask me how things are going, I would be saying, things are in process. They're in flux. But I didn't go down the road of victimization by retelling and refeeling all of those feelings. And I wasn't looking for sympathy from other people. They couldn't help me get to that core of who I am. I knew I needed to dig for that. And so I began digging. Who am I? What is this teaching me? How can I be my most empowered self instead of a lower self, weaker? So after I stopped telling the story, I started asking, what am I supposed to learn from these experiences? What are the lessons? What's trying to emerge in me that I needed this to happen? What is that I am supposed to incorporate into my evolution? That is key. And so I started asking those questions. And over time, I got answers. Over time, I realized the treasure in that story, in that event. And the treasure was that you were powerful beyond measure. And I needed to give you an impetus to make you uncomfortable enough to find your strength. And that's what that event was all about. So now, years later, the story that I tell when people need a story, I give them the story of strength, of how I overcame, of the power and the strength that came from within me that I didn't even know was there, but I needed an event to show me what was there.